Stop overthinking now. Reprogram your brain for clarity, focus, and inner peace. Overthinking is one of the quietest forms of self-sabotage, a mental loop that fills your mind with worry, doubt, and endless analysis until even the simplest decisions feel heavy and complicated. Most people don't realize that overthinking is not a permanent trait. It's a pattern the mind learns, and with the right awareness, it's a pattern the mind can unlearn. This audiobook will help you understand why your thoughts spiral, how to break the cycle, and how to train your mind to think with clarity, focus, and calm confidence. If you're new here, welcome to Audiobook Soundz, Chasing Greatness. Make sure you subscribe, like, and follow the channel so you never miss another life-changing audiobook. Let's begin your journey toward a quieter mind and a clearer life. Chapter 1. Understanding the Overthinking Mind. Overthinking is a mental habit that begins quietly, often without your awareness, and it slowly grows until it becomes the dominant voice inside your head, shaping the way you interpret your experiences, the way you make decisions, and even the way you see yourself. It starts as a simple attempt to solve a problem or prepare for a situation, but instead of leading you toward clarity, it pulls you into a spiral where you replay the same thoughts again and again, hoping that thinking more will somehow give you the certainty you crave, even though deep down you already know that no amount of mental analysis can guarantee a perfect outcome. The mind begins to chase answers that do not exist, examining every angle of a situation, predicting every possible future, and revisiting every mistake from the past, leaving you exhausted long before anything real has even happened. To truly understand overthinking, you must first understand that your brain is wired for survival, not peace, which means it pays more attention to danger, uncertainty, and potential threats than it does to calm or optimism. This survival mechanism was essential hundreds of years ago when danger was physical and immediate, but today the threats your brain focuses on are mostly emotional, imagined, or tied to fear about the future. When your mind senses anything uncertain, it tries to protect you by thinking through every scenario, every possibility, every outcome, believing that if it can anticipate enough, it can prevent disappointment or pain. However, instead of protecting you, this constant mental scanning begins to overwhelm your nervous system, creating anxiety, stress, and emotional fatigue. Overthinking also develops from past experiences, moments when you felt unprepared, embarrassed, or blindsided, moments when you wished you could go back and do things differently. Your mind remembers those painful situations and tries to prevent them from happening again, so it overanalyzes every detail of your present life, attempting to control what is beyond your reach. This is why your thoughts sometimes feel louder than your reality and why small situations can trigger huge emotional reactions. Your brain is not responding to the moment in front of you. It is responding to the memories and fears stored behind you. The more you repeat these thought patterns, the stronger they become. The brain loves repetition, and every time you run the same worry through your mind, you deepen the neural pathway that carries that fear, making the thought more automatic in the future. Before long, overthinking becomes your default response to uncertainty, and even simple decisions begin to feel overwhelming. You may find yourself second-guessing conversations, analyzing your own behavior, replaying what you said, imagining what others might think, and creating stories based on assumptions rather than facts. This internal noise grows louder over time until it becomes difficult to hear your own intuition, clarity, or confidence beneath it. One of the most damaging effects of overthinking is how it steals your ability to take action. The more you think, the more you fear choosing the wrong path, and the more you fear choosing the wrong path, the more you hesitate. This hesitation creates doubt, and doubt becomes a barrier that blocks opportunities, relationships, and personal growth. Overthinking does not just drain your energy, it paralyzes your potential. It convinces you that you need more information, more reassurance, more time, when in reality, you need more trust in yourself. Understanding the overthinking mind means understanding that the problem is not how much you think but how you think. Thinking becomes destructive when it stops being useful and becomes repetitive, circular, and fear-driven. Instead of seeking clarity, it seeks certainty, and certainty is something life can never guarantee. When your mind tries to control what cannot be controlled, it creates stress. When it tries to predict what cannot be predicted, it creates anxiety. And when it tries to solve problems that do not actually exist, it creates emotional exhaustion. But here is the empowering truth. Once you become aware of this pattern, you can begin to change it. Awareness is the first step toward transformation because you cannot interrupt a pattern you cannot see. When you start to recognize when your thoughts are spiraling, when you notice that your mind is replaying the same scenario for the 10th time, or when you realize that you are imagining negative futures that have not happened, you take back control. Instead of getting lost in the noise, you become the observer of your thoughts, and that shift alone weakens the power of overthinking. The goal is not to stop thinking but to learn how to guide your mind instead of allowing it to guide you. When you understand the roots of your overthinking, the fears behind it, the memories fueling it, the beliefs driving it, you begin to reclaim authority over your inner world. You start to see that your thoughts are not commands, they are suggestions. They are not truths, they are interpretations. And they are not who you are, they are simply stories your mind has learned to repeat. As you continue this journey, you will discover how to replace overthinking with clarity, how to create space between your thoughts and your emotions, and how to build a calm, steady internal environment where decisions become easier, life feels lighter, and your mind begins to work for you rather than against you. Understanding the overthinking mind is the first step toward freeing yourself from it, and with every moment of awareness, you move closer to the peace and mental clarity you deserve. Chapter 2: Breaking the Cycle of Mental Noise. Mental noise is the constant stream of unfiltered thoughts that fills your mind from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, and for many people it continues even through the night, showing up in dreams, restlessness, or sudden jolts of anxiety. It is the background chatter that repeats old memories, replays past mistakes, imagines future problems, and comments on every situation you encounter. This noise feels uncontrollable because it operates automatically, fueled by patterns that were built over years of stress, fear, insecurity, and emotional conditioning. To break the cycle of mental noise, you first have to understand how it begins and why it feels so powerful. The cycle usually starts with a single thought, often harmless, that triggers a feeling. That feeling triggers another thought, which then amplifies the feeling, and before you realize what is happening, you are caught in a loop where thought and emotion feed each other endlessly. The more intense the emotion, the louder the thoughts become, and the louder the thoughts become, the weaker your sense of calm and clarity grows. This is why one negative idea can escalate into an entire storm inside your mind, making small issues feel enormous and simple decisions feel overwhelming. Your brain is not trying to hurt you, it is trying to protect you by preparing for every possibility, but this preparation becomes destructive when it never stops. One reason mental noise repeats so aggressively is that the brain is designed to conserve energy by returning to familiar thinking patterns. Even if those patterns cause anxiety, the brain will choose them because they are known, comfortable, and predictable. The brain does not distinguish between what is helpful and what is harmful. It simply follows what it has practiced the most. If you have spent years thinking in circles, questioning your decisions, or imagining the worst-case scenario, your mind will continue those behaviors automatically because they have become deeply embedded pathways. This is why breaking the cycle can feel difficult. You are not fighting one thought, you are interrupting an entire system. To break the cycle, you must first become aware of it as it is happening. Most people fall into the loop without noticing the transition from a normal thought to a spiraling one. Awareness is the moment you pause and recognize that your mind has drifted into repetition, that your thoughts are no longer moving toward solutions but circling the same idea repeatedly. This pause is powerful because it interrupts the automatic flow and gives you a moment of control. Instead of being swept away by the noise, you become an observer of it, and observation is the first step toward mastery. Once you notice the loop, the next step is to separate the thought from the emotion it is attached to. Mental noise grows stronger when thought and emotion merge into one experience. When you feel anxious and think an anxious thought, it feels like the thought must be true because the emotion is so intense. But emotion is not evidence, and intensity is not accuracy. When you tell yourself, "I am feeling anxiety," and my mind is magnifying this thought because of that emotion, you create distance between what you feel and what you believe. That distance weakens the noise. Breaking the cycle also requires understanding that not every thought deserves your attention. Most mental noise comes from thoughts that are meaningless, inaccurate, exaggerated, or misplaced. They arise because the brain is constantly generating predictions and possibilities, not because those predictions are real. When you realize that most thoughts are simply mental activity, not instructions, not warnings, not truths, you stop treating them as emergencies. You begin to let them pass through your mind the same way clouds pass through the sky. Another crucial part of breaking mental noise is grounding yourself in the present moment. Mental noise lives in the past and the future. It cannot survive when you return to the now. The mind spirals when it revisits what went wrong yesterday or imagines what might go wrong tomorrow. When you bring your attention back to your body, your breath, your environment, or the task directly in front of you, the noise begins to fade because it no longer has fuel. Presence is like a reset button that returns your mind to reality instead of letting it roam through imagined scenarios. It is also important to challenge the belief that thinking more will give you clarity. Overthinkers often believe that if they continue analyzing, they will eventually reach the perfect answer or the perfect decision, but clarity does not come from excessive thinking. It comes from calm thinking. When your mind is overwhelmed, decisions become heavier, problems appear larger, and confidence disappears. The moment you stop forcing yourself to find answers and allow your mind to settle, clarity begins to rise naturally, just as muddy water becomes clear when left undisturbed. Another strategy for breaking the cycle is redirecting your mind toward action instead of endless evaluation. Overthinking thrives in inactivity. When you sit still mentally or physically while holding a fear or uncertainty, your mind fills the space with noise. But when you take even a small action, writing something down, organizing a plan, asking a question, or moving your body, you shift your brain out of analysis mode and into engagement mode. Action breaks cycles that thought alone cannot. Finally, breaking mental noise requires patience. The loops you experience were built through years of repetition, and they do not disappear overnight. Each time you interrupt a spiral, even if only for a moment, you weaken the old pathways and build new ones. Over time, your mind learns not to follow the old patterns so easily, and the noise becomes softer, shorter, and less convincing. You begin to think with more clarity, respond with more intention, and live with more peace. The goal is not to eliminate thinking but to eliminate the patterns that drain you, confuse you, and keep you stuck. When you break the cycle of mental noise, you reclaim the ability to think clearly, to act decisively, and to move through life with a quiet strength that overthinking once buried. This is how you begin to step out of the noise and into a calmer, more focused version of yourself, one thought, one pause, and one moment of awareness at a time. Chapter 3: Reprogramming Automatic Negative Thoughts. Automatic negative thoughts are some of the most powerful forces shaping your inner world, not because they are accurate or insightful, but because they operate silently beneath your awareness, slipping into your mind so quickly and so frequently that you often assume they are simply part of who you are. These thoughts form over years of experiences, fears, disappointments, and expectations, eventually becoming habitual patterns that replay themselves without your permission. They can arise in an instant, sometimes triggered by the smallest event, sometimes appearing without reason at all, creating emotional storms that feel overwhelming even though nothing significant has happened in the external world. And because these thoughts occur so naturally, you begin to trust them, even when they misrepresent reality and restrict your potential. Overthinking is often fueled by these automatic negative thoughts, because the mind tends to return to what it knows best, and if it has been trained, consciously or unconsciously, to focus on fear, doubt, or worst-case scenarios, it will repeat those patterns again and again. You may find yourself replaying past mistakes as though they define your identity, imagining future disasters long before they have a chance to occur, or criticizing yourself for not being perfect even when perfection was never required. Over time, these mental habits create a kind of internal maze where every turn leads to more confusion and every thought deepens emotional instability. To begin reprogramming your mind, you must first learn to recognize these negative thoughts the moment they appear. Instead of allowing them to blend seamlessly into your consciousness, you bring them into the light and examine them as separate from yourself. When you observe your thoughts rather than react to them, you begin to see how often they exaggerate your fears, minimize your strengths, or distort the truth of who you are. You start to realize that many of the thoughts you trusted were nothing more than old fears disguised as logic or outdated beliefs masquerading as facts. Becoming aware of these patterns is the first powerful step, because awareness breaks the automatic nature of the thoughts and gives you the opportunity to choose how you respond. Once you can see these negative patterns clearly, the next step is to challenge them, not with aggression or denial, but with calm questioning. If a thought insists you are not capable, you ask where this belief began and whether it reflects your current reality or simply a fear rooted in the past. If a thought tells you that something terrible will happen, you question whether this prediction is evidence-based or merely a projection of anxiety. When you challenge a thought, you remove the authority it once held and expose it as a temporary mental habit rather than an unchangeable truth. This process weakens the emotional grip the thought had on you and creates space for new perspectives to emerge. Reprogramming your mind also requires replacing negative thoughts with intentional, empowering ones. This does not mean forcing yourself into blind positivity or pretending that challenges do not exist. It means giving your mind a healthier, more accurate narrative to operate from. If your automatic thought says, "I always mess things up," you replace it with, "I am learning, growing, and capable of improving." If your mind tells you that you are unworthy, you replace it with, "I deserve growth, opportunity, and peace." These replacements might feel unfamiliar at first because your mind has been conditioned to believe the old story, but repetition turns new thoughts into new beliefs, and new beliefs turn into new emotional patterns. Another crucial part of reprogramming negative thinking is developing emotional stability. When your emotions are unregulated, negative thoughts gain strength, feeding on your fear and uncertainty. But when you learn to stay calm, present, and grounded, even when your mind tries to pull you into panic or doubt, you weaken the power of automatic negativity. Emotional stability allows you to respond to your thoughts rather than react impulsively to them. You begin to trust yourself more, and as that trust grows, the influence of negative thinking fades. You must also consider the role of your environment, because thoughts do not exist in isolation. They are shaped by the people you allow around you, the content you consume, and the experiences you repeatedly expose yourself to. If you spend your time surrounded by negativity, criticism, or fear-driven narratives, your mind will absorb those messages and replay them as internal dialogue. But if you surround yourself with encouragement, growth-oriented conversations, and peaceful environments, your internal world will begin to reflect those influences. Reprogramming your mind requires protecting your mental space as diligently as you would protect something precious and irreplaceable. Through awareness, challenge, replacement, emotional regulation, and intentional influences, the mind begins to shift. The thoughts that once controlled you lose their strength. The patterns that once felt unbreakable begin to dissolve. You stop living in reaction to negative thoughts and begin choosing thoughts that strengthen your confidence, clarify your direction, and stabilize your emotions. This transformation does not happen in a single moment but through consistent practice, one thought at a time, one pattern at a time, one choice at a time. Eventually, you will notice that the thoughts arising in your mind no longer sabotage your progress or weaken your spirit. Instead, they support your goals, encourage your growth, and align with the person you are becoming. You begin to trust your own mind again, not as a source of anxiety, but as a tool for clarity and strength. And when that shift happens, you gain the freedom to think in ways that uplift you, motivate you, and shape a life grounded in confidence instead of fear. Reprogramming your thoughts is not just a mental exercise. It is the foundation of a new identity, one built on stability, direction, and an unshakable sense of inner power. Chapter 4. Mastering the Power of Mental Clarity. Mental clarity is one of the rarest forms of strength in a world that constantly demands your attention and overwhelms your senses with noise, information, opinions, and unending responsibilities. Most people live their lives with cluttered minds, not because they are incapable of clarity, but because they have never been taught how to create space inside themselves for stillness, order, and calm reflection. When your mind is crowded with worry, unnecessary thoughts, emotional residue, and unfinished decisions, you begin to move through life reacting rather than choosing. You lose the ability to see clearly, to think deeply, and to understand what truly matters. A cluttered mind makes even simple decisions feel heavy, and even small problems feel overwhelming. Mental clarity is not simply a peaceful state. It is a powerful tool that sharpens your perception, strengthens your decisions, and allows you to move through life with confidence and direction. It begins with understanding that your internal environment is just as important as the physical environment you live in. If your surroundings were filled with piles of scattered papers, broken objects, and unnecessary clutter, you would instantly feel the heaviness of disorder. Yet people often tolerate mental clutter without realizing that the same heaviness exists inside them. Unresolved thoughts, unprocessed emotions, unanswered questions, and unfinished commitments all accumulate and create internal chaos. To master mental clarity, you must first become aware of the clutter within your mind. This clutter might come from holding on to old mistakes, replaying past conversations, worrying about possibilities that may never occur, or trying to control outcomes that were never yours to control. It might come from carrying the expectations of others, comparing yourself to people who are not walking your path, or drowning in the constant noise of digital distraction. When you take a moment to observe your inner world, you begin to see how much mental space is occupied by thoughts that do not serve your growth or peace. The process of clearing your internal environment begins with slowing down. Most people are so accustomed to a life of rushing, multitasking, and reacting that they forget what quiet feels like. Slowing down does not mean doing less. It means giving your mind the opportunity to breathe, to rest, and to recalibrate. When you slow down long enough to listen to your own thoughts, you discover which ones truly matter and which ones are simply noise. You start recognizing the difference between thoughts that move you forward and thoughts that pull you backward. This awareness is the doorway to clarity. Reducing mental clutter also requires letting go of thoughts that add no value to your life. Many people carry unnecessary worries, old resentments, unused dreams, and self-imposed expectations that serve no purpose other than draining emotional energy. The mind becomes clearer when you practice releasing what you cannot control, forgiving what no longer needs to occupy your heart, and allowing past moments to remain in the past. Letting go is not weakness. It is a profound act of strength that creates space for clarity to enter. To deepen mental clarity, you must also learn to focus your attention intentionally. A clear mind is not an empty mind. It is a directed mind. When you train yourself to concentrate on one thought, one task, or one feeling at a time, you quiet the noise that distracts you. In this focused state, you can think more deeply, solve problems more effectively, and make decisions with a greater sense of certainty. Mental clarity sharpens your intuition because it removes the static that blocks your inner wisdom. The clearer your mind becomes, the more easily you recognize what is right for you. Another essential part of mental clarity is creating internal stillness. Stillness does not mean silence. It means being present in your own mind without resisting, rushing, or judging your thoughts. When you allow your thoughts to settle naturally, the important ones rise to the surface while the unnecessary ones fade away. In this stillness, clarity grows. You begin to understand your emotions, your fears, your desires, and your values in a deeper, more honest way. Stillness is the foundation of wise decision-making because it allows truth to be heard without interruption. Your external environment also plays a significant role in your clarity. The people you interact with, the information you consume, the routines you follow, and the habits you maintain all influence the state of your mind. Surrounding yourself with constant negativity or endless distraction clouds your judgment and weakens your focus. But creating environments that promote calmness, order, and intentional living helps your mind mirror that same structure. Mental clarity requires boundaries. Boundaries with people, with technology, and with anything that pulls you away from your inner peace. Ultimately, mastering mental clarity is about creating a mind that supports your growth rather than obstructs it. A clear mind sees opportunities where a cluttered mind sees obstacles. A clear mind makes decisions with strength while a cluttered mind hesitates out of confusion. A clear mind brings emotional stability, allowing you to respond to life gracefully instead of reacting impulsively. When your internal world becomes organized and spacious, everything outside you begins to make more sense. Mental clarity is not a one-time achievement but a continuous practice. Every day brings new thoughts, new challenges, and new emotions, and your responsibility is to maintain the space within you so that these experiences do not overwhelm your inner balance. With consistent practice, clarity becomes your natural state. You begin to live with intention rather than impulse, awareness rather than distraction, and purpose rather than confusion. And once you master mental clarity, overthinking loses its power. Decisions become easier, emotions become steadier, and your path becomes clearer. You begin to move through life with a mind that is organized, focused, and deeply aligned with your purpose. In this state, peace is not something you chase. It becomes something you naturally inhabit. Chapter 5. Training your focus for a sharper mind. Focus is not something you are born with or without. It is a trainable skill, a mental discipline that grows stronger each time you choose to direct your attention rather than surrender it. In a world filled with distractions, constant notifications, endless information, competing responsibilities, and emotional noise, most people have forgotten what it feels like to give their full attention to one single moment. Their minds move in many directions at once, scattering their energy, weakening their clarity, and fueling the very overthinking they want to escape. Without focus, the mind becomes restless, jumping from thought to thought, unable to settle, unable to commit, unable to move with purpose. Training your focus begins with understanding that your attention is one of your greatest forms of power. Where your attention goes, your energy follows, And where your energy flows, your life grows. If your attention is divided, your progress will be divided. If your attention is scattered, your results will be scattered. But when you gather your attention and direct it intentionally, you create momentum, clarity, and strength. You begin to take control of your mind instead of letting your mind pull you in a dozen different directions at once. One of the greatest challenges to focus is mental distraction, those small, persistent thoughts that tug at your awareness and pull you out of the present moment. These distractions may involve worries about the future, unresolved emotions from the past, or even trivial thoughts that appear simply because your mind is accustomed to wandering. The problem is not that these thoughts appear. The mind will always generate thoughts. The problem is that most people immediately follow those thoughts, giving them attention and energy until they are led far away from what they were doing or how they wanted to feel. Over time, this habit weakens your ability to remain present and makes it harder to think with clarity or act with intention. To strengthen your focus, you must first learn to quiet internal noise. This does not mean forcing your mind to be silent. It means learning how to recognize irrelevant thoughts quickly and release them without attaching emotion or meaning to them. When a distracting thought appears, you acknowledge its presence but refuse to follow it. You allow it to pass the same way a cloud moves across the sky, noticed but not clung to. Each time you do this, you train your mind to remain anchored instead of drifting away. Focus also requires conscious simplification. Many people overwhelm themselves with too many tasks, too many decisions, and too many commitments, making it nearly impossible for their minds to concentrate fully on anything. When your mental plate is overloaded, your attention becomes fragmented, and overthinking thrives in that environment. Reducing unnecessary commitments, organizing your priorities, and training yourself to work on one goal at a time creates a mental environment where focus can flourish. When the mind is not weighed down by excess, it becomes sharper and more powerful. Another essential part of training your focus is learning to anchor yourself in the present moment. Overthinking often comes from living in the future, imagining what might happen, or living in the past, replaying events you cannot change. The present moment is the only place where clarity exists, where action is possible, and where peace can be experienced. When you bring your attention back to your breathing, back to your body, back to your immediate surroundings, you remind your mind that it does not need to wander to find safety or control. Anchoring yourself in the present trains your mind to return home each time it begins to drift. Strengthening focus also requires building small habits of sustained attention. Spend time each day intentionally concentrating on one thing without allowing yourself to multitask or check out mentally. It might be reading, writing, a conversation, or a creative task. When your attention wavers, which it will, you gently bring it back without judgment. This simple practice, repeated consistently, strengthens the mental muscle responsible for sustained focus. Over time, you will notice that you can concentrate longer, stay present more easily, and move through tasks with greater efficiency and calmness. It is also important to remember that your environment influences your ability to focus. A chaotic environment creates a chaotic mind, while an organized, intentional environment supports mental clarity. Reducing digital noise, creating physical spaces for deep focus, and protecting your time from unnecessary interruptions are all practical ways to sharpen your mental discipline. Focus thrives in environments that are designed to support it. Finally, developing a sharper mind requires patience and compassion toward yourself. Focus is a skill that grows gradually, not instantly. There will be moments when your attention drifts, when distractions feel stronger than your discipline, and when your thoughts feel too loud to quiet. Instead of criticizing yourself, you simply return to the practice. Each return is a victory. Each moment of awareness is progress. Over time, you begin to notice that your thoughts no longer pull you in every direction. You feel calmer, clearer, and more in control of your mental energy. When you train your focus, you reclaim your inner power. You begin to think more clearly, decide more confidently, and live more intentionally. Your mind becomes sharper, not because the world around you becomes quieter, but because you learn how to remain centered in the midst of the noise. And as your focus strengthens, overthinking loses much of its influence, because a focused mind does not wander into fear. It stays anchored in the present, grounded in clarity, and aligned with purpose. A sharp mind is not a gift, it is a practice. And every day you choose to direct your attention instead of surrender it, you strengthen the mental foundation that will support every goal, every decision, and every dream in your life. Chapter 6: Calming Emotional Overload Continued. Emotional overload is one of the most powerful forces behind overthinking, because when your emotions rise faster than your ability to process them, your mind enters a state of panic, searching desperately for answers, control, or certainty. Instead of responding with clarity, the mind begins to spin, creating endless scenarios, exaggerated predictions, or worst-case possibilities that only intensify the emotional chaos already brewing inside you. Overthinking may feel like a thinking problem, but most of the time it is actually an emotional one. Because the moment your emotions become overwhelming, your thoughts become unstable, reactive, and fearful. To calm emotional overload, you must first understand that emotions are neither your enemy nor a sign of weakness. They are simply signals, messages from your inner world, trying to alert you to something you have not yet acknowledged, something unresolved, something unhealed, or something you are afraid to face. When you ignore these signals, bury them, or try to outrun them, the emotions grow stronger and louder, eventually overflowing into your thoughts. The mind becomes their outlet, replaying memories, magnifying fears, or imagining threats that do not exist. Emotional energy always looks for expression, and if it cannot come out through calm awareness, it will come out through overthinking. The first step in calming emotional overload is learning to pause. When strong emotions hit, most people react instantly, either by spiraling into anxious thoughts or by trying to suppress the feelings so quickly that they never understand what triggered it in the first place. But emotional discipline begins with stillness. When you pause, even for a moment, you interrupt the automatic link between emotion and overthinking. You create space to breathe, to observe, and to respond with intention rather than impulse. In that space, your emotion loses its grip and your mind begins to steady itself. As you practice this pause, you must also learn to label your emotions honestly. Many people say they feel stressed, when what they truly feel is fear, disappointment, guilt, overwhelm, or even sadness. Others say they feel angry, when beneath that anger is a feeling of helplessness or vulnerability. The mind cannot calm what it cannot name. When you identify the true emotion beneath your thoughts, you bring clarity to what was previously confusion. Naming your emotion allows your mind to stop spinning because it finally understands what you are dealing with. Once an emotion is acknowledged, the next step is to understand its origin. Emotional overload does not come from single events alone. It is often the accumulation of unresolved moments, old wounds, repressed feelings, unmet needs, or deep fears that have never been given attention. When something in the present triggers one of these deeper emotional roots, the mind reacts as if the current situation is more dangerous or significant than it actually is. This is why overthinking often feels disproportionate to the moment. Your mind is not reacting to what is happening now. It is reacting to everything that moment represents. To calm emotional overload, you must allow yourself to feel without drowning in the feeling. This balance is the essence of emotional discipline. Emotional discipline does not mean controlling your emotions. It means controlling your response to your emotions. When a strong feeling arises, you breathe through it, you acknowledge it, You observe it moving through your body, and you remind yourself that emotions are temporary waves, not permanent states. Every emotion, no matter how intense, eventually passes. The more you resist it, the harder it fights. The more you allow it, the more smoothly it moves through you. Another core element of emotional discipline is learning how to challenge emotional narratives. When you feel overwhelmed, your emotions will attempt to tell your mind a story, usually a story rooted in fear, lack, or insecurity. You might think, "I can't handle this," or "everything is going wrong," or "this feeling means something bad will happen." But emotions are storytellers, not truth tellers. When you learn to question the stories your emotions create, you take back control of your mind. You can acknowledge the emotion while refusing to believe its exaggerated narrative. Calming emotional overload also requires strengthening your nervous system. Your body and mind are deeply connected. When your body is tense, exhausted, or overwhelmed, your mind becomes more reactive and vulnerable to emotional spirals. Practices that calm the body, deep breathing, grounding techniques, moments of silence, intentional relaxation, physical exercise, directly reduce emotional overload and help you regain mental balance. A calm body signals safety to the mind, and when the mind feels safe, it stops overthinking. Equally important is creating emotional boundaries within yourself. You must learn to differentiate between what you feel and who you are. You may feel anxious, but you are not anxiety. You may feel uncertain, but you are not defined by uncertainty. When you stop identifying with your emotions, they lose the power to overwhelm you. You observe them instead of becoming them, and this separation gives you tremendous control over your inner experience. Furthermore, your relationship with pressure plays a key role in emotional overload. Many people believe that pressure is a sign they must immediately fix everything, solve everything, or prove something. But pressure is not a command. It is simply a sensation. When you learn to sit with pressure without rushing to eliminate it, you develop emotional resilience. You teach your mind that intensity is manageable, which prevents automatic overthinking from taking over. Finally, emotional discipline grows when you learn to create internal peace on purpose. You cannot wait for life to become calm before calming yourself, because life will always carry unpredictability. Instead, you cultivate daily habits that reinforce emotional balance: quiet reflection, grounding rituals, gratitude, meaningful rest, and intentional self-awareness. These practices build an emotional foundation strong enough to withstand the noise of life without collapsing into mental chaos. When you master the art of calming emotional overload, overthinking weakens because it no longer has the emotional fuel it once relied on. Your mind becomes steadier, your reactions become slower and wiser, and your inner world becomes more peaceful. You begin to move through life with a sense of quiet strength, not because challenges disappear, but because you have learned how to remain centered no matter what rises within or around you. Emotional discipline is not about suppressing emotion. It is about elevating your awareness so you can engage with your emotions from a place of confidence instead of fear. And when that transformation takes place, your thoughts follow, becoming clearer, calmer, and anchored in truth rather than panic. Chapter 7. Detaching from what you cannot control. One of the greatest sources of mental suffering is the mind's desperate attempt to control what was never meant to be controlled. The human mind craves certainty, predictability, and safety, and when life refuses to offer those things, as it often does, the mind begins to cling, grasp, and tighten its grip on anything that feels like it might provide a sense of stability. This attachment, born from fear and fueled by overthinking, becomes a prison where the mind convinces itself that constant worry, constant prediction, constant preparation, and constant mental pressure will somehow protect you from disappointment or danger. In reality, this attachment only exhausts you, weakens you, and steals your peace long before anything even happens. Detaching from what you cannot control is not an act of indifference. It is not apathy, nor is it avoidance. Detachment is clarity. It is strength. It is the discipline of separating what belongs to you from what never did. It is the decision to stop carrying burdens that were never yours to begin with. And it is the profound recognition that mental peace does not come from controlling life. It comes from releasing the illusion that you need to. Overthinking thrives on the belief that you can think your way into preventing every worst-case scenario. Your mind imagines that if it anticipates every possible outcome, you will be safer. Yet the more you predict, the more anxious you become, because the future is infinite and the possibilities you can imagine are endless. The mind cannot outthink uncertainty, and the harder you try, the more trapped you feel in a cycle of fear disguised as preparation. To detach from what you cannot control, you must first understand how much mental attachment costs you. Every moment spent replaying old conversations, analyzing someone's tone, worrying about how others perceive you, or imagining how the future will unfold drains your energy and narrows your emotional capacity. You begin to live in your head instead of your life. You respond to imaginary versions of the world instead of the real one. And as your mind clings harder, your inner peace slips further away. The first step toward true detachment is recognizing that your responsibility begins and ends with what lies within your influence. Your thoughts, your actions, your decisions, your habits, your responses, these are within your domain. Everything else, involving other people's opinions, their choices, their emotions, the outcome of events, the direction of circumstances, is outside your control, no matter how deeply you think or how intensely you worry. When you stop trying to control what belongs to the world and start focusing on what belongs to you, you free yourself from a weight you were never built to carry. Releasing what you cannot control requires trust. Trust in yourself, trust in your resilience, and trust in life's unfolding. This does not mean ignoring challenges or pretending that everything will always work out exactly as you want. It means believing that whatever happens, you will adapt, respond, and rise with strength. Without this trust, detachment becomes impossible, because your mind will keep insisting that worry is required for safety. But the truth is that you have survived every uncertain moment up to this point, not because you predicted everything, but because you adjusted to everything as it came. Another essential part of detachment is surrendering the need for constant answers. The mind hates unanswered questions, and when it cannot find clarity, it creates stories. Stories about what people think, stories about what might happen, stories about why something happened, stories that seem logical but are rooted in fear. These stories amplify anxiety and make you feel trapped in a reality shaped by assumptions rather than truth. When you learn to accept that not every question needs an immediate answer and not every situation needs an immediate solution, your mind begins to soften. It stops grasping and allows life to unfold without forcing outcomes. You also weaken attachment by grounding yourself in the present moment. Overthinking lives in the past and the future, rehashing what has already happened or fearing what has not. But detachment lives in the present, because in the present, you deal only with what is real. The moment you return your attention to where your body is, where your breath is, where your senses are, you reclaim authority over your mind. You remind yourself that the only place you have power is here, now, not in a mental projection of tomorrow. Another powerful part of detachment is neutrality. Neutrality means observing a situation without immediately labeling it as good or bad, safe or dangerous, permanent or catastrophic. When you approach life with neutrality, you reduce emotional reactivity and give yourself space to respond with wisdom instead of fear. Neutrality is not passivity, it is perspective. It is the choice to gather clarity before creating conclusions. To detach from what you cannot control, you must also recognize that people's emotions, decisions, and perceptions are not your responsibility. Many individuals carry the emotional weight of others as if their approval or disapproval determines their worth. But attachment to people's reactions creates constant anxiety because those reactions are unpredictable. Detachment allows you to show compassion without sacrificing yourself, to care without collapsing, and to love without losing your inner balance. Perhaps the most transformative aspect of detachment is realizing that letting go does not mean losing something. It means gaining something you have lacked: freedom. Freedom from worry, freedom from mental exhaustion, freedom from emotional turbulence, freedom from the pressure to predict, control, or perfect every moment of your life. When you detach, you discover that peace does not come from controlling life. It comes from participating in life without clinging to outcomes. Detachment is the art of trusting that life will meet you halfway when you stop gripping tightly out of fear. It is the inner knowing that your peace is too valuable to be dependent on circumstances that change without your permission. It is the confidence that whatever happens, you will handle it with strength, clarity, and dignity. And as you master detachment, overthinking loses its fuel. When the mind no longer needs to predict everything, it begins to rest. When it no longer tries to hold what it cannot, it becomes lighter. And when it no longer mistakes attachment for control, it finally discovers peace, not from the absence of uncertainty, but from the presence of inner strength. Chapter 8. Building a Mindset of Inner Peace. Inner peace is not something you stumble into by accident, nor is it something that arrives only when life finally becomes perfect. Inner peace is a mindset, a skill, a daily practice, and a conscious decision that you cultivate within yourself regardless of what is happening around you. Most people believe peace is external, that it depends on quiet environments, stable circumstances, or the absence of problems. But real peace, lasting peace, the kind that transforms your thinking and protects your mind from overthinking, is built from the inside out. It is not a gift from the world. It is a gift you give yourself. To build a mindset of inner peace, you must first understand that peace is not the absence of noise. It is the ability to remain centered even when noise surrounds you. It is the ability to stay grounded when the world becomes fast, unpredictable, or overwhelming. It is the strength to hold your calm when others lose theirs. Peace begins the moment you stop allowing external chaos to dictate your internal state. The process of building inner peace begins with intention. Peace does not happen by luck. It happens when you choose it repeatedly, especially in moments when it feels easier to be reactive, anxious, or rushed. This means deciding every day that your mental well-being is a priority. It means choosing thoughts that nourish you instead of ones that drain you. It means choosing actions that stabilize your emotions instead of ones that feed your stress. And it means choosing environments, physical, emotional, and social, that support your inner calm. One of the most important elements of inner peace is creating habits that slow down your internal pace. Overthinking thrives in speed. The faster your mind runs, the more chaotic your thoughts become. To slow your inner world, you must build rituals that bring your attention back into the present moment. This could be a morning practice of sitting quietly before your day begins, giving yourself space to breathe deeply and reconnect with your body. It could be journaling your thoughts to release mental clutter. It could be a daily walk where you allow your mind to settle into a gentle rhythm. These small rituals create pockets of stillness that eventually expand into a calmer, everyday mindset. Another crucial piece of inner peace is simplifying your mental environment. Many people live in a state of internal overwhelm because they carry too many expectations, too many responsibilities, too many fears, or too many unprocessed emotions all at once. Simplifying your mind means learning to let go of what you no longer need, what no longer serves you, and what no longer aligns with the person you are becoming. It means releasing outdated beliefs, unhealthy attachments, and unnecessary obligations. It means refusing to participate in drama, refusing to internalize negativity, and refusing to carry emotional baggage that weighs down your spirit. Inner peace also requires the practice of acceptance. Acceptance does not mean giving up or ignoring problems. It means acknowledging reality without adding unnecessary resistance or emotional chaos. When you accept people for who they are instead of who you hope they will be, you stop fighting losing battles. When you accept situations you cannot change, you stop wasting energy on frustration. When you accept that life will always contain uncertainty, you stop trying to control the uncontrollable. Acceptance creates clarity, and clarity creates peace. A mindset of inner peace is also built through emotional regulation. Your emotions shape your thoughts, and when your emotions overflow, your mind becomes unsettled. Emotional regulation means learning to respond rather than react, to observe your feelings rather than drown in them, and to calm your nervous system before your thoughts spiral into fear or confusion. Deep breathing, grounding exercises, slow movement, and mindful awareness are powerful tools that help you return to your center when emotions try to pull you away from it. Peace is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to move through your emotions with steadiness. Another powerful component of inner peace is gratitude. Gratitude shifts your focus from what is missing to what is present, from what is wrong to what is right, from what is uncertain to what is already supporting you. The moment you practice gratitude, your nervous system relaxes, your perspective expands, and your thoughts soften. Gratitude does not eliminate problems, but it balances them by reminding you that life is always offering something to appreciate, something to learn from, and something that grounds you in the beauty of the present moment. Your beliefs also play a major role in your inner peace. If you believe the world is dangerous, your mind will always be on guard. If you believe you must be perfect, your mind will always feel tense. If you believe you must control everything, your mind will always be overwhelmed. But if you believe you are capable of handling whatever life brings, peace becomes possible. If you believe you deserve calm, you begin to seek it. If you believe life unfolds in ways that ultimately support your growth, you stop resisting and start trusting. Peace is built on beliefs that empower rather than imprison. Inner peace also grows when you remove yourself from environments that feed anxiety. Your surroundings shape your thoughts far more than you realize. When you spend too much time with people who complain, overreact, or live in constant chaos, your mind begins to mirror that energy. When you immerse yourself in social media filled with comparison and noise, your mind becomes restless. Protect your inner environment like a sacred space. Choose people who make you feel safe, calm, and encouraged. Choose activities that nourish your mind rather than overstimulate it. Choose silence over noise when your thoughts become too loud. Ultimately, building a mindset of inner peace is about creating a life that reflects your deepest values instead of one shaped by fear or pressure. It is not a temporary state but a long-term practice. It requires discipline, awareness, and patience. It requires you to return to yourself again and again, even when the world demands your attention. Peace grows each time you choose to slow down instead of speed up, each time you choose clarity over confusion, each time you choose presence over worry, and each time you choose trust over fear. When peace becomes your inner foundation, overthinking loses its power. Your thoughts become quieter, your emotions become gentler, and your decisions become clearer. Instead of reacting to life, you begin responding with wisdom. Instead of being overwhelmed by uncertainty, you begin embracing life as it comes. You become grounded, centered, and aware. You become someone who carries peace within, no matter where you go or what challenges arise. Chapter 9. Developing Mental Confidence and Self-Trust. Self-trust is one of the most powerful foundations of a peaceful mind, yet it is also one of the most fragile. The moment you stop trusting yourself, your choices, your instincts, your ability to handle challenges, your mind begins to compensate by overthinking. Overthinking is a substitute for self-trust. When you doubt your own judgment, your mind tries to fill the gap with analysis, second-guessing, predictions, and endless internal debates, as if thinking more deeply will somehow create certainty where confidence is missing. But the deeper truth is this: the more you trust yourself, the less you need to overthink, because trust brings calm where doubt brings chaos. To develop mental confidence, you must first understand where self-doubt comes from. No one is born doubting themselves. Doubt is learned from past failures, from criticism you absorbed, from expectations you struggled to meet, from moments where you felt unprepared or unsupported, and from environments that taught you to question your worth rather than recognize your potential. Over time, these experiences form an internal narrative, a quiet voice that whispers, "What if you're wrong? What if you're not ready? What if you make the wrong choice?" That voice becomes so familiar that you start to mistake it for truth. But self-doubt is not truth. It is simply a habit of thinking that reflects old fear rather than present capability. Rebuilding self-trust begins with awareness. You must catch the moments when doubt tries to take over, and instead of letting it shape your decisions, pause and ask yourself, is this doubt based on my actual ability, or is it based on fear from my past? Most of the time, you'll discover the doubt has nothing to do with your current situation and everything to do with the stories you've carried for years. Once you separate your present self from your past experiences, you free yourself to approach life with a clearer and more empowered mindset. Another important part of developing self-trust is learning to make decisions without demanding absolute certainty. Many people believe that confidence means always knowing the right answer, but confidence is not the absence of uncertainty. It is the willingness to choose even when uncertainty exists. Life rarely gives you perfect clarity before a decision. Clarity often comes after the decision, when you move forward and learn through action. The more decisions you make, the more confident you become. Confidence grows through movement, not hesitation. To strengthen your decision-making ability, start by making small choices quickly and deliberately. When you practice choosing without overanalyzing, you teach your brain that it is safe to take action. Small decisions, what to eat, what time to start your day, when to rest, how long to work, become building blocks for bigger decisions. Each time you choose with confidence, even if the decision is simple, you reinforce the belief that you are capable of determining your path. Over time, the fear of choosing weakens, and your inner confidence grows stronger. Another essential aspect of self-trust is learning to honor your instincts. Your intuition is not random. It is the internal wisdom formed from your experiences, your values, your observations, and your emotional intelligence. When you ignore your instincts out of fear, you weaken your connection to yourself. When you honor them, even in small ways, you reaffirm your ability to navigate life. The people who trust themselves the most are not those who avoid mistakes, but those who trust their ability to correct their path if they do make one. Mistakes don't destroy self-trust. Avoiding decisions does. Self-confidence also grows when you stop seeking constant approval from others. The more you rely on external validation to feel secure in your choices, the weaker your internal confidence becomes. People will always have opinions, and those opinions often reflect their own fears, limitations, or preferences rather than what is right for you. When you trust yourself, you listen to others with openness but rely on your own judgment to guide your path. You begin to understand that your life is your responsibility, not a collective decision shaped by people who do not walk your journey. Self-trust deepens when you respect your own voice more than the outside noise. A powerful way to strengthen mental confidence is to keep the promises you make to yourself. Each time you commit to something, waking up early, finishing a task, prioritizing your well-being, and follow through, you send a message to your mind, I can depend on myself. That internal consistency builds trust effortlessly. But when you repeatedly break promises to yourself, even small ones, your mind learns the opposite. I cannot rely on myself, which fuels more doubt, more hesitation, and more overthinking. Start with small promises and honor them. Consistency builds confidence faster than perfection ever could. Another vital part of developing self-trust is learning to evaluate yourself based on growth rather than outcomes. Many people lose confidence when a decision doesn't turn out how they expected, even if the decision was made with good judgment. But outcomes are influenced by countless variables, not all of them under your control. Confident people do not judge themselves solely by whether something succeeds or fails. They judge themselves by whether they acted with integrity, clarity, and intention. When you shift your focus from results to growth, you remove the pressure that causes overthinking and open the door to more courageous decision-making. Self-compassion is also crucial. You cannot build confidence while constantly criticizing yourself. Harsh self-talk erodes self-trust because you become your own enemy instead of your own advocate. To trust yourself, you must treat yourself with the same understanding and patience you would offer a close friend. When you make a mistake, instead of attacking your judgment, acknowledge the lesson and move forward with more wisdom. Confidence grows when you allow yourself to be human without punishment. As your mental confidence develops, overthinking naturally begins to fade. This is because overthinking is a mechanism the mind uses when it does not trust itself to make the right choice. But when you strengthen self-trust, your mind no longer needs to go in circles searching for impossible certainty. You choose, you act, you learn, and you grow. The more you practice this cycle, the more confident you become in your ability to handle whatever comes next. Ultimately, developing mental confidence and self-trust is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming reliable to yourself. It is about believing in your ability to adapt, to learn, to rise, and to continue moving forward even when things don't go according to plan. It is about forming an inner partnership with yourself so strong that uncertainty no longer intimidates you because you trust your ability to navigate it. When you trust yourself deeply, you no longer fear the unknown. You no longer overanalyze every decision. You no longer rely on others to choose your path. Instead, you walk through life with a calm strength, knowing that whatever happens, you have the wisdom and resilience to handle it. And when that confidence becomes rooted in your identity, overthinking transforms into clarity, hesitation transforms into action, and doubt transforms into an unwavering belief in your own power. Chapter 10. Becoming the master of your thoughts. Mastering your thoughts is not about silencing your mind completely or forcing yourself to think positively every moment of the day. It is about developing a deep, inner authority, an awareness powerful enough to observe your thoughts without being controlled by them, a strength steady enough to redirect your mind when it tries to wander into fear or confusion, and an identity grounded enough to choose your inner world instead of reacting to the outer one. Becoming the master of your thoughts means stepping into a new level of self-leadership, where your mind no longer pulls you in every direction, but instead follows the guidance of your highest self. Your thoughts shape everything. Your beliefs, your emotions, your actions, your confidence, your peace, and ultimately your destiny. For most people, the mind feels like a wild river, constantly flowing and pulling them wherever the current goes. Thoughts rise without permission, worries appear without warning, and emotions react without intention. But the truth is that your mind is not meant to be the master, it is meant to be the tool. Mastery begins the moment you stop being the passenger of your thoughts and become the driver. The first step in mastering your thoughts is cultivating awareness. You cannot change a thought you're not aware of. Most overthinking happens automatically, not because the thoughts are powerful, but because they are unnoticed. They slip into your mind quietly, like whispers that eventually become storms. When you develop the practice of noticing your thoughts in real time, you break the cycle. You begin to see the patterns you've been running on for years, patterns of doubt, patterns of fear, patterns of self-criticism, patterns of imagining the worst. Awareness shines a light on those patterns, and once something is seen clearly, its power over you begins to fade. The next step in thought mastery is choosing your response. Many people believe they must believe every thought that enters their mind, but thoughts are not commands, and most are not truths. A thought is simply a suggestion, a possibility presented by your mind based on past experiences, emotional states, and subconscious conditioning. When you learn to pause before reacting, you begin to separate yourself from the thought. You observe it, question it, and decide whether it aligns with who you want to be. This pause is where your power lives. It is in that space that you shift from automatic thinking to conscious thinking. Once you strengthen your ability to respond instead of react, you begin to shape your internal environment. Just as your body needs healthy nourishment, your mind needs empowering thoughts to function at its best. This does not mean pretending everything is perfect or ignoring your challenges. It means choosing thoughts that support your growth rather than sabotage it. It means replacing "I can't do this" with "I will learn what I need." It means shifting "something will go wrong" to "whatever comes, I will handle it." It means choosing thoughts that guide you forward instead of ones that keep you stuck in fear. Mastering your thoughts also requires understanding that the mind takes direction. When you give your mind a focus, it follows it. When you allow your mind to wander aimlessly, it often drifts toward worry or negativity because the mind's default setting is survival. This is why intentional thinking is so powerful. When you set clear goals, clear intentions, and clear mental priorities, your mind channels its energy toward what matters instead of what scares you. The more direction you give your mind, the more disciplined it becomes, and the easier it is to prevent overthinking before it spirals. Another essential part of thought mastery is learning to let thoughts pass without attachment. Just because a thought appears does not mean you must engage with it. Many people create suffering not from the thought itself, but from the mental story they build around it. A single worry becomes a chain of 20 imagined outcomes. A single doubt becomes an entire narrative of failure. But when you practice letting thoughts come and go without grabbing onto them, your mind becomes lighter. Thoughts lose their weight because you stop feeding them with fear, attention, and analysis. This practice transforms your mind from a battlefield into a peaceful space where thoughts flow freely without overwhelming you. Equally important is aligning your thoughts with your identity. You cannot become the master of your thoughts while holding on to an identity built on fear, doubt, and limitation. You must step into a new version of yourself, one that believes in their ability to grow, adapt, and overcome, one that chooses strength over fear, clarity over confusion, and intention over chaos. When your identity shifts, your thoughts follow. When you begin seeing yourself as someone capable, resilient, and grounded, thoughts that contradict that identity lose their influence. Mastery also involves creating daily rituals that reinforce a calm and focused mind. Whether it's a few minutes of quiet reflection in the morning, deep breathing throughout the day, journaling in the evening, or simply pausing before reacting, these practices anchor your mind and remind it who is in control. Your thoughts reflect your habits. When your habits support a centered, disciplined mind, overthinking fades naturally because your mind is no longer operating from fear or desperation. With time, your relationship with your thoughts transforms. Instead of battling them, you begin guiding them. Instead of drowning in them, you begin navigating them. Instead of fearing them, you begin understanding them. This is true mastery, not the elimination of thoughts, but the leadership of them. When you reach this level of inner command, your thoughts become your allies rather than your enemies. They support your goals, strengthen your emotions, and reinforce your confidence. The final stage of becoming the master of your thoughts is living with intention. When your thoughts reflect purpose, clarity, and direction, your entire life transforms. You stop reacting to circumstances and start creating your path. You stop living in mental chaos and step into mental clarity. You stop fearing the unknown and begin trusting yourself to navigate it. Mastery brings freedom, the freedom to think clearly, to act confidently, and to live with a steady mind regardless of what life brings. In the end, mastering your thoughts is not about perfection. It is about empowerment. It is about reclaiming the authority you have always had over your inner world but may have forgotten along the way. It is about remembering that your mind is powerful, but you are more powerful. And when you finally step into that truth, your thoughts no longer control your life, you do. You have reached the end of this audiobook, and that alone is something worth acknowledging, because most people spend their entire lives trapped in their thoughts, unaware that their minds are shaping their emotions, their decisions, and their future every single day. But you made a different choice. You took the time to understand your inner world, to challenge old patterns, and to learn how to build a healthier relationship with your thoughts. That choice is the beginning of transformation, because the moment you decide to take responsibility for your mind, you also take responsibility for the direction of your life. As you move forward, remember that mastering your thoughts is not a one-time achievement. It is a daily practice, a continuous act of self-awareness and self-leadership. Some days your mind will feel steady and clear, and other days it will try to pull you back into old habits of worry, doubt, and overthinking. When that happens, remind yourself that progress is not perfection. Every moment you choose calm over chaos, every moment you pause before reacting, every moment you return to clarity instead of spiraling, those are victories, no matter how small they seem. This journey is about becoming the author of your own inner world instead of a passenger in your own mind. And now that you've learned how your thoughts work, where they come from, and how to redirect them, you have the power to build a life that reflects intention instead of fear, clarity instead of confusion, and strength instead of emotional overwhelm. Keep practicing. Keep growing. Keep choosing the thoughts that support the person you are becoming. With consistency, your mind will begin to follow your leadership automatically, and the peace you've been searching for will feel less like a moment and more like a natural state of being. If this audiobook added value to your life, I want to encourage you to stay connected with us. You're now part of a community of people who are committed to growth, clarity, and personal transformation. So if you're new here, make sure you subscribe to Audiobook Soundz, Chasing Greatness, because we create content that helps you think better, live better, and become better every day. Remember to like this video, leave a comment sharing what chapter impacted you most, and save this audiobook so you can return to it whenever you need to reset your mind or refocus your thoughts. Your engagement helps the channel grow and allows us to keep creating powerful content just like this. Thank you for listening, thank you for choosing growth, and thank you for taking this journey with me. Until next time, keep protecting your peace, keep sharpening your mind, and keep chasing greatness.